Welcome to Everybody Wants to Be a Farmer, a podcast about the hope, hardship, and fistfuls of grit it takes to win the land's trust. In this show, we'll share the story of our farm, J.C. Acre, and talk with others shaping the future of food and farming. Those who've stayed, those who've left, and those like us just trying to find their way. I believe that in one way or another, everybody wants to be a farmer.
All right. Welcome back to Everybody Wants to Be a Farmer. I'm Josh Davis, and I am here with one of the regenerative agriculture pioneers, Gabe Brown. He is a massive influence to so many regenerative farmers. Gabe, I'm super honored that you're here with me today.
Well, thanks. It's great to be with you, Josh.
That's good. I leading up to this interview, have you read the Divine Comedy, Dante's Inferno, and those?
Oh, a bit.
Some of it, I'm sure. Yeah, I did a thing where a huge group of people worldwide, I think, were going through the entire Divine Comedy in 100 days. It was called 100 Days of Dante, and so that was the first time I'd ever read it. But in this regenerative world, there are certain farmers who kind of feel like Virgil leading Dante through the through the layers of hell and into paradise, and you're one of those for me. So I appreciate you being here. I'd love to just talk kind of about your history in agriculture. I know that a lot of our listeners don't know your history, and I would love to talk to you about that. I'd love to talk about understanding ag and Regenified, and just sort of some of the difficulties that you have seen in being kind of a first generation farmer, not necessarily, but pretty dang close. And then talk through some of the reasons that it is crucial for the future of our food. Would you just give us a little bit of for those of us, or for those who have not read your book, would you just kind of give us the rundown of Gabe Brown?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'll give you kind of an abbreviated version here, but I was born and raised in the city of Bismarck. My parents didn't farm. However, I took a real interest in agriculture when I took a vocational agriculture course when I was in the 9th grade. And I was just enamored by all things agriculture, and got very involved in FFA, Future Farmers of America, and started working on farms during the summer months, and graduated from high school, went to college to actually be a vocational agriculture instructor. I thought that's one way I could be involved in ag, is to teach our students about it. So as luck would have it, though, when I was in college, 2 years in, I married my best friend in high school, and she was from a farm, rural Bismarck farm. And as luck would have it, she had 2 sisters, no brothers. And so her father called us one day. We were still in college, and he asked if we'd be interested in coming back and taking over the farm. And I tell everybody I was ecstatic. My wife, not so much, because she told everyone she married a city kid to get away from the farm. But she relented, and we moved back onto my in-laws, her parents' farm. And I learned how to farm from my father-in-law, who was very conventional, heavy tillage. He loved tillage, half summer fallow, half crop. Had a herd of beef cattle, set stock though, didn't rotate pastures at all. And that's how I learned to farm, and we started farming that way. However, one thing about me, though, not being from a farm, I'm just an avid learner. And so I have a ferocious appetite for reading, and I had studied about no-till, and it just made sense. And so I started to rent some cropland, and we ran all the beef cattle on his farm. And started to develop our own farm. Well, in 1991, we had the opportunity to purchase part of the farm from him, and so we did. That allowed me the freedom then to go 100% zero till. We did that in 1994 and had a good crop, and I thought, boy, this is easy. 1995 came along, and the day before I was going to start harvesting 1,200 acres of spring wheat, we lost our entire crop in a hailstorm, which was pretty devastating. We didn't have hail insurance. My father-in-law had farmed there for 25 plus years and had only had hail a couple of times, and it was never took his entire crop. Well, that set us back financially. 1996 came along. We lost 100% of the crop to hail again. So then things are really getting tough. My wife and I took off farm jobs. We had a young family, got to pay the bills. And so we took off farm jobs in order to put food on the table. I was fortunate in that the bank, the bank didn't have a lien on our land because we had that on a contract for deed with my in-laws. So they couldn't foreclose on me, but they didn't want to loan me any more money to purchase inputs. So I had to figure out, okay, how am I going to get this farm productive and profitable without much borrowed money? So started to diversify a lot, plant a lot of different crops and started into some cover crops. And I will say by then, I was 3+ years into no-till, we were starting to see a change in the soil, started seeing some earthworms show up, started seeing more birds and wildlife coming to the farm. And so I started noticing some subtle changes. Anyway, 1997 come along and it was a very dry year. Nobody harvested a crop in our area. So that was 3 years of no crop income. 1998 come along and things are really getting tough. I always joke to everyone that it was so tough the banker knew when we bought toilet paper, because there was just not much money to go around. 1998 came along and we had a June hailstorm that took 80% of our crop. So 4 years, basically no crop income. My wife and I were $1.5 million in debt, which was an awful lot back in 1998 for a young couple starting out. But I tell people it was really difficult to go through. I never questioned my ability. I knew I could always fall back on my education and get another job to support my family. But in saying that, being stubborn and bullheaded, I wasn't going to give up. So although it was really difficult, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because it really showed me that, I can produce a crop and raise livestock in a way that does not cost near as much money, yet is very profitable. So it was shortly thereafter that, I started really going down the path of integrating cover crops into our cropping system, diversified. I couldn't, make a living selling spring wheat for $3 a bushel, but I had started growing some fall biennials, winter triticale, hairy vetch, started marketing those for seed, very profitable. So we started to claw our way out of that hole of debt pretty quickly and started really noticing some changes on the land ecologically, life in the soil. We were infiltrating water, at a much greater rate than any of the neighbors were. We were more resilient in periods where we weren't getting moisture. And so ecologically, I started noticing those changes. And then in the meantime, we were starting to meet a lot of people. I was being introduced to scientists and educators and other farmers who were going down what's become known today as the regenerative path. And so change happened. It seemed slow at the time, but we dug our way out of debt and to the point where fast forward, to simply within 20 years, we were debt free, and we've been able to transition the farm over to our son and his wife, and start a couple other businesses now that I laugh. I say I'm retired, but I think I'm just tired now with as much as I have going on. But so yeah, a real whirlwind, and I just feel blessed that I've been put in a position where I can help show others that there is another way to
Mm,
farm and ranch, and there's a way to do it that's enjoyable and profitable and good for the family that's operating that farm or ranch, but also good for society, our rural communities and society as a whole, and doing the right thing for future generations.
mm. I know that y'all focus a lot on crop. A lot of your focus is on like cash crop production, as well as early on, especially, right?
Hmm.
Like, so when you were describing seeing the changes in your soil and seeing water retention back on that land, were you running cattle at that time, or were they still on the
Oh
other
yeah. No,
place?
so our ranch today is approximately 6,000 acres of owned and leased land. And of that, when I was operating it, there was about 2,000 acres of cropland, but the other
Mm,
4,000 acres has been perennial pastures. The majority, quote unquote, native pasture, it hasn't been tilled or touched at all, but there's also some expired CRP ground, et cetera,
hmm
that was once cropland that we've seeded back. So I had both. Beef cattle were always a major source of income for 25 years. I
mm.
was in the registered cattle business, had a bull sale for 25 years, sold breeding stock. That was my way of adding value. So animals have always been an important part of the farm.
Yeah. At what point did y'all start diversifying your animal impact on the land?
Yeah. And the animal diversification, I give our son Paul 100% credit for that. I'll never forget the conversation we had uh, one day. I talked to him often when he was away at the university, and he he said, "Dad, you've always preached to me about diversity, but the only livestock species we have is beef cattle." He said, "I'd
Mm,
like to have chickens and sheep and maybe hogs." And what could I say? I said, "Go for it, son." So when he got back from college in 2011, the first thing he did was he went and found a lady who was selling 150 laying hens, and he purchased them and started selling eggs out of the back of his pickup in a Kmart parking lot. And that then expanded the following year with some sheep, and then the next year with some hogs. And now today on the farm there's about 800 head, excuse me, of beef cattle, and several hundred sheep, and 400 hogs, and 1,600 laying hens. And then he also, the broiler operation, we raised broilers and turkeys for a number of years, but now he has, because there's no slaughter facility in North or South Dakota to process poultry, he has that raised on a regenerative farm in Missouri, and then he markets some of those products.
that's interesting. That the broiler processing um, is a dilemma for a lot of farmers. We're in Texas,
Yep.
and I think the closest poultry slaughterhouse to us is in Kansas. Um,
Yeah.
and that's been, I know that is and I think each state probably has their exemption qualification. Like we can do up to 1,000 birds without anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big problem. So y'all have a farm in Missouri that raises y'all's.
Yeah, yeah. So we could do the same in North Dakota. And early on we raised them ourselves. We could process up to 999. and then market them. But legally, you can't ship them out of state. And Paul's business now has expanded so much, he's shipping to all the lower 48, beef, lamb, pork, eggs, poultry, honey. And it became where demand was simply so much that, we couldn't supply that demand. So he had friends in Missouri who were going down the same path, and they built a poultry processing facility, USDA inspected, on their farm. So Paul contracts with them. They raise the birds and process them and then ship it up frozen, and he markets that.
Interesting. That's great. That's a cool thing about, and I have no ag experience prior to starting our little farm. Zero. And it's one of the things that I really appreciate about regenerative agriculture, and maybe this is because that's all I know, is that you can do things like this, that you can partner with someone in a different state and cooperate on a regenerative effort, and both people get to profit from it. It's a really, really cool kind of web that it's basically the exact same thing happening with business and people as is happening in the soil.
Yeah.
This diversity, this web of health is happening. It's awesome.
Yeah. One of the things I would say too, Josh, is that regenerative agriculture, it's a different mindset, and it's a mindset more of community and sharing. One of the things that I really enjoy the most is realize where I started with those years of hail and drought in the 90s. I couldn't talk to any of my neighbors really, or that. Yeah, some of them had hailstorms also, but they were in a different mindset because they were in the industrial mindset. It's commodities. Everybody wants to rent all the land, including their neighbors, And so I had to pick up the phone and talk to people states away. Well, the beautiful thing now is I can, you and I, you're in Texas, I'm in North Dakota, and we're having a conversation. And we're not afraid to share what our experiences are and what we know. And that's a good thing. Now, I want to get back just for a moment, if I may, about the production in, having other people produce some of your goods. And I think it's really good that we focus on what we're good at, and, don't try and raise all these different products. People often hear me and what we're doing on our ranch, and they think, oh, we got to do all this. No, you got to do what fits your context and works for you and is profitable for you. Okay. It makes sense for us to stack enterprises because we have a large land base. However, we're not going to be able to raise broilers in the middle of winter in North Dakota. You got to realize that. We tried goats, for instance, for a few years. We don't have the browse for goats. Our nearest trees really are in Canada. There's it's wide open plains here. You have to fit your context and do what works in your environment. The other thing I'd like to say is we would love to be able to sell all of our products locally. North Dakota only has 730,000 people in the whole state. Now, yes, that's enough to consume all our products, but we haven't built the demand locally yet. So that's why we ship products.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. We focus a lot on local first. That's one of our kind of values as a farm. And we are very close to a couple of decent sized communities. And so that works for us. And, places that are far more rural, like we've had Will Harris on the show, and he's not close to anything. And so, like,
Yeah, I've been to Will's at least 10 times. I can tell you where he's at.
yeah. And so, yeah, I appreciate the focus on local food, and I do think that local food is crucial to the future of farming. But it just exactly what you said. It just doesn't always
Yeah.
work exactly the way we dream it up.
And, I'll be honest, we're capitalists. And if someone in California wants to buy our product and they're willing to pay for the freight and that, okay. Now
You
we can get
bet.
into the discussion. Okay, should we be burning the fossil fuels to ship it that far? That's another discussion. But
Yeah.
they're willing to pay for it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like the goal, and I would assume this is also your goal. I don't know. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but the goal is to see um, uh, products from Brown's Ranch shipped to California, and maybe that sparks other people to do what I'm doing with zero experience and start their own little farm to provide food for their own little community over there. Or, I mean, there's a lot of good that can come from shipping that meat, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's like, why, does Gabe Brown, why am I happy to be on this podcast? The answer is I've seen the difference regenerative agriculture has made in my life and with my family, and the impact we're making on the community and the nutrient dense food we're growing. I want to share that. And I never look at anybody else doing it as competition. No, we don't have to worry about that at all. When all farmers in the United States turn to being regenerative, that'll be a good thing.
Yeah,
I'd
that's
jump
good
for
for
joy and
everybody.
be happy. The world would be a much better place, be much healthier. Our communities would be thriving. It'd be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a good way for us to kind of get into talking about understanding ag, one of your other
Yeah.
companies. You very clear. If you haven't read Gabe's book, Dirt to Soil, if someone's asking me about regenerative agriculture and I want to do a good job of telling them what it is, I send them your book and Will Harris's book. And Gabe is, no question, unbelievably passionate about helping farmers adopt a more resilient way of producing food and caring for land. And understanding ag is exactly that. It's exciting to me to go on the website and read the stories of farmers that have basically been pulled from the pit because of what you've built. And how does understanding ag work?
Yep. So back when our son Paul came back from college, back to the ranch, we made a promise to him. Paul, when you're 30 years old, we're going to turn over management of this ranch to you. And we put a succession plan in place, which is another whole topic, and I can't emphasize enough the importance of succession plans to people and making that clear. So I pretty much kept that promise. When Paul turned 30, he was doing 90% of the labor on the farm. So I joked to people, so he might as well manage it. And to help ease that transition, I needed to step back. And so that during that time, about 2017, some friends of mine and myself started understanding ag. And the reason we started understanding ag and named it that, was because we all had realized that farmers cannot implement what they do not know. And our land grant universities, extension, certainly not where farmers get their information from, farm broadcast shows from your local suppliers. they're not educating farmers as to these regenerative practices. You know, I tell people I have 2 college degrees, and never in my years of college did they teach me how a soil aggregate was formed, how the natural nutrient cycle works, how the natural water cycle works. No, the soil was simply a medium to hold a plant upright. You add all this chemistry. They're not being taught, so they truly don't understand how ecosystems function. We can't expect them to suddenly turn and go down the regenerative path when they haven't been taught this. So we named it and formed Understanding Ag. Understanding Ag, first and foremost, is an education company. We're about educating farmers, ranchers, land managers, whoever will listen, as to how these ecosystems function. Well, little did I know when we started that in 2017, it had grown to the point today. We believe we're the largest regenerative consulting company in the world. We're approaching 37 million acres that we're consulting on all across North America, from Mexico up through U.S., Canada, England, Ireland, Denmark, doing work in Germany, starting in Australia. We've done a bit in South America. And we have a team of consultants who we're very, very picky about who we hire. Pretty much have to be experienced farmers, ranchers who understand the regenerative processes, and most all our consultants have their own farm or ranch, and they've gone through this. They understand it, because we found that really helps when they're out on a farm or ranch to help that individual. Now, what's exploded our growth also is demand from brands and industry, believe it or not, who have come to understand that regenerative agriculture gives them a consistent, resilient supply of high quality product. So one of our first clients was General Mills, came to us and they wanted to start a pilot project. How do we being General Mills, help our farmers in our oat supply chain to adopt these regenerative practices? So we started working with a group of oat growers, and it's just exploded. And other brands now, if you name most of the major brands, and understand because of NDAs, I can't disclose who we're all working with, but if you name 10 of the major brands in the world, I'll guarantee you we're working with 8 of them, with the exception of in China, etc. But here in North America, So we're doing a lot of consulting, helping a lot of farmers, and that is really rewarding, because they're seeing the benefits. They're seeing all the increased profitability and the changes to their ecosystems.
Yeah, it's very awesome what y'all are doing, and there's a lot of there's not a lot of consulting that happens because of context, because the panhandle of Texas is very different than where in some ways different than where you are in North Dakota. We have no trees also. It's very dry here also. So we're probably a lot more similar than a lot of places. But, I've visited farms over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's beautiful and green and lush there. And we can't do a lot of talking back and forth about what works for them and what will work for us, because they don't know what's going to work over here. And that, I'm assuming because of how picky y'all are with your consultants, that you have a broad range of contextual experience where you could.
Right. That's right.
You could send somebody down here and tell me almost exactly what would work.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that Yes, context is different. And that's one of the big changes since my book was written is that we added the principle of context.
Mm,
You know, every location around the world is a little bit unique from the standpoint of moisture, humidity, growing season, what the species are of plants, animals, insects there. But in saying that, the four ecosystem processes are the same everywhere in the world.
mm,
You know, the energy cycle, sunlight, photosynthesis, the nutrient cycle, plants feeding biology, these carbon compounds and the biology running its life cycle, bringing nutrients to the plants, the water cycle, and then biodiversity. Those four ecosystem processes are the same everywhere. You know, I was just in Australia earlier this year doing a series of workshops, and that's what I told people. You look at soil in Australia, it's the same thing as soil in Bismarck, North Dakota, or the Texas Panhandle. It's sand, silt, and clay held together by biotic glues. The sun shines. We have a water cycle, energy cycle. It's all those processes are the same. So then you're absolutely right. We have people that have experience in those contexts, and then you can talk to any farmer anyway.
mm,
And, I've been kind of arrogant and told people you put Gabe Brown anywhere in the world where there's production agriculture, I can get it to work because it's simply how nature functions. And
mm.
it's understanding that unlocks a whole key to profitability. I just spoke at Acres USA conference, and in my closing keynote, I talked about lessons I've learned over the past 35 plus years going down this path. And, I showed a picture of sunshine and I told them true wealth, new wealth is generated by how much of that sunshine you can keep on your farm. If you walk out on your farm and you see bare soil, if you can see that soil at all, and it's not, it's not being blocked by a leaf, if that sunlight's not getting intercepted by a leaf, a living plant, you're losing potential income,
Mm,
and that's how we need to look at things. And that's how we turn around profitability on a farm. Instead, most farmers today, oh, I need to go rent more land to be more profitable. Well, you're not making near full potential use of what you have. Why
mm,
would I want to go spend more money and capital to invest in more land, need more equipment because it's, all this, need more animals to graze it when I'm not making full use of what I have,
mm.
you know?
Yeah.
That's how we make a difference. And I tell people, I often get asked, why has understanding ag grown so exponentially? I said, it's easy. We're very, very good at helping our clients make money
Mm,
by not writing checks. They don't have to write checks to do this. They simply need to change the way they think.
mm. And so our farm, we don't do any kind of crop
Mm-hmm.
land. We don't do any crops. We have,
Yep.
at this point, we have laying hens, we have meat chickens, broilers, and a set of pigs. And we rotate those around. How I'm sure it works. I know that. So I know that your method is you'll harvest or you'll run, you'll graze an area, and then you basically immediately follow that with a no-till drill, right? A lot of times.
Only on the cropland. And I
Okay.
should state that our son has now um, put most of the cropland back to perennials. So
Mm,
if it's in perennials, no need to seed a cover crop. Everything in
mm,
the diversity's there,
yeah.
So only on the cropland do we go in and seed a cover crop. But
Interesting.
realize we
Okay.
only have approximately 110 to 120 frost-free days a year.
Wow.
That's it. So our growing season is very short. Now, obviously, we can grow things longer than that because there's frost tolerant species. But my whole goal there is to accomplish just what I told you previously: have living plants to intercept sunlight, because the more sunlight, the more potential profit I can make. Now, if you're asking me, Josh, do in your context, should you be going in and seeding something? Absolutely not. In a perennial system, you should have warm and cool season species there, depending where you're at, your environment, and then from there, that'll give you the diversity that you need.
That's good. Yeah, that's great to know. That is great to know. So how, if we have a listener, and maybe even for this podcast host, what are the steps to take to have some consulting done on your farm?
Yeah. So if you're interested in visiting with us and at Understanding Ag, all you simply have to do is reach out. You can go to our website, Understanding Ag, and there's a form on there. Contact us, and one of our consultants be happy to have a conversation with you. No obligations there, because one thing about us is we're not doing it strictly to make money. Yes, it's a for-profit business, but we want to see you succeed. And we're going to have a conversation with you about your context, what you're looking for, and then we'll steer you down the appropriate path. One thing I do want to say that sets us apart and makes us different is we don't sell anything. We've absolutely refused to sell any product, because the minute we sell a product, we're biased in our consulting, we feel, and we're skewed thinking, oh, we need this client to use our product. We just refuse to do that. The only thing we're selling is our time and our experience. That's it.
Yeah, that's a heck of a product right there, I think. But yeah, that's great. If I want to see a lot of regenerative effort going into our area. We started this farm because I was doing a lot of reading about the Dust Bowl, and our area was basically the hub of the Dust Bowl, and in a lot of ways the cause of the Dust Bowl. And every spring and late fall, we see everything just floating in the air and blowing away all of the topsoil. And so my wife and I just wanted to see what we could do on this little piece of land that we get to live on, to help it stick to the ground and maybe hold some water. And I really would love to see a lot more people adopt this way of producing food, caring for land. But so I hope that if someone's listening to this that is interested in this, you have a resource now. There's no reason not to reach out and talk to a consultant at Understanding Ag.
Yeah. If I may, Josh, I'll just expand on that a little bit. I really appreciate what you said there about you see the dust blowing around and where you're at, brittle environment. Here where I'm at in North Dakota, we're semi-brittle. We get approximately 10 to 12 inches of rainfall a year, and then another 5 to 6 inches from snow, 17, 18-inch moisture environment. So semi-brittle, not as brittle as you are. But we have to understand our context, where we're at, and what that's capable of. You talk about dust blowing around, and I know our viewers can't see this, but I'm holding up a sheet of paper. And I'm holding it crossways because the thickness of that sheet of paper is about the equivalent of 1 ton of topsoil per acre. So when you see dust, in other words, soil blowing around in the atmosphere, how many tons of topsoil are in the air? And you look at many places that are currently being farmed with cropland, and you realize they shouldn't be. They should be
Mm,
in perennials. We're seeing this major challenge, Ogallala Aquifer, from Nebraska all the way going down into Texas. And the fact that aquifer the water in that aquifer is being diminished. The production agriculture being used, it's not sustainable. We
mm,
can't keep doing that. So think now if where you're at, Josh, and then other places that are brittle, what if we would turn to a perennial ecosystem? And I just used this in a presentation. I was consulting on a very large ranch in eastern New Mexico, so not too
mm.
far from where you're
Yeah.
at. And we're standing out there, and I mean, there is feet between plants. It's bare
Mm,
soil, cap soil. You're in basically a desert type environment, and we're looking at this soil, and it's pretty white on top, and they're saying, "Well, this is our soil. We can't change that." So I simply put a spade in the ground, pulled up a shovel full of this white soil.
hmm
It was dirt. It wasn't even really soil.
Yeah.
Then I moved simply 18 inches away near a plant, and I dug a spade full of soil, and it was reddish brown.
Mm,
And I said, "So you're telling me," I said this to the ranch manager. I said, "So you're telling me the soil type varies within that 18 inches?" And you should have seen the look on his face. Uh, well, I don't know. So we went to another spot, did the same thing, same exact results. I
mm,
said, "You see what I'm trying to teach you here? The soil is not the problem. The management of that soil is the problem. You need living plants." "Well, Gabe, this is a desert environment." I said, "No. Read the historical context. If you go back in the journals, West Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, those were not deserts. They were vast grasslands at one time. It's mankind that has turned that into a desert
mm.
because of our management." I often tell people this when I speak to large groups. I said, "I can't tell you how many times I've been told, but Gabe, you don't understand. My soils aren't like that." And I said, "You need to understand that that's because of you.
Mm,
Go look in the mirror. Your farm, your ranch is a direct reflection of you. And if you don't like how it's producing, that's up to you to change." And it's the understanding of ecological processes along with your management that will cause that change.
mm. Man, yeah. Yeah, that it's think
We
yeah,
simply need to take it upon ourselves more and understand. Now, I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. Our ranch is not perfect. We still have a long ways to go. But in saying that, we're literally running 10 times as many beef animals as we did when we started. Plus, we have all these other enterprises, sheep and hogs and laying hens and honey, and we're producing crops. So our farm is exponentially more profitable because of it. And
mm,
it's not so much that we're stacking enterprises as it is we're growing more biomass, more living plants, more plant diversity, collecting more solar energy. When my wife and I purchased the home place there from my in-laws in 1991, we could only infiltrate a half of an inch of rainfall per hour.
mm,
Now scientists come on our place using very sophisticated equipment have shown we can infiltrate over 30 inches of rainfall per hour. Now,
wow.
Bismarck, North Dakota has never seen 30 inches of moisture in a year, let alone in an hour.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is, how did I get from a half inch to 30 inches? How did I get from 1.7% organic matter to over 8% on some of our uh, land today? It's with management. It's
Mm,
with us educating ourselves. That's how we do it. And I encourage everybody, just learn
mm.
and then implement. it isn't rocket science, you
Yeah.
know? It isn't rocket science.
This episode of Everybody Wants to Be a Farmer is sponsored 100% by J.C. Acre, offering prairie-raised eggs and pork to our friends in the Amarillo and Canyon area of the Texas Panhandle. Be on the lookout for brand new chicken meat coming in December. You can find us online at jcacre.co or follow us on Instagram at jc_acre. Back to you, Josh.
They started a farm and they got some chickens and eggs.
Yeah. And there's a huge our area is really unique. Like we had an insanely wet summer this year, and it made me look like a really good farmer because everything was green and tall and pretty. And but then we'll have a year where we get 11 inches of rain, and it's super windy, and it's just begging to be dried out. And you talked about the Ogallala. There's a lot of pushback in our area. I think probably in every area. I'm sure you've seen me talking about pushback. You're probably like, you silly boy, you don't know what pushback is. There's a huge amount of pushback on responsible irrigation and maybe no irrigation. And it's a really hard, it's a tall hurdle to jump to try to convince someone that adopting regenerative practices will create drought resistance. And I think unless someone sees the spongy land accepting the water, they're not going to believe it, because farmers believe that when it dries out, the best thing to do is turn it all over so that the wet soil or the wet dirt is on top and it holds down the loose, dry dirt. What is your approach when I think you just told me your approach?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you how and I'll use a case study, a client of ours, to illustrate that. So we have a client not too terribly far from where you live with 100,000 irrigated acres. Okay, think of that.
Golly.
100,000 irrigated acres. So the first thing, we were invited out there. First thing we do is what's called an infiltration test. Well, we look at the soil with the spade, a shovel. That's the first thing, shovel test. Then you drive a 6-inch diameter cylinder, 6 inches tall, halfway into the soil. Okay. You clear off any residue that's on that soil so the dry residue doesn't absorb the water. Then you pour 440 milliliters, which is roughly equivalent to one of these little plastic water bottles, into that ring, and see how long it takes for that water to infiltrate into the soil. Okay. Then what you do is you go over to another area. Usually it's a road ditch from the irrigated field, somewhere there's perennial forages growing, and you do the same thing. See how long it takes to infiltrate. When they see, there's been times, Josh, where we've left that inch of water for a day and come back and it hasn't infiltrated yet.
Oh, wow.
Now, most times it'll infiltrate within, 30 minutes to hour and a half. But then you do a second inch, and that inch in a lot of those situations will take hours to infiltrate. Okay. Whereas where there's perennials growing, it'll infiltrate rather quickly, usually within minutes. Okay. For both inches. What that illustrates to them is its management. And all of us as land managers need to understand how a soil aggregate is formed, and think of soil aggregates like marbles in a jar. A soil aggregate is formed when plants exude these carbon compounds. Biology, including mycorrhizal fungi, which mycorrhizal fungi secretes a sticky substance called glomalin, that starts binding sand, silt, and clay particles together, forming these aggregates. Okay, why does a plant do that? Why does biology do that? Because biology lives in and on pore spaces between those soil aggregates. The more aggregates, the more biology, the more aggregates, the more water infiltration. We grow aggregation to depth. So on our farm, I talked about my father-in-law liked to till. We had no soil aggregation. It was compacted, and this goes back to where you mentioned that farmers want to till the soil so water infiltrates. Well, all they're doing is collapsing those pore spaces. And yes, the very top will absorb, but very short, infiltrate water, but for a very short time. And it'll actually collapse the pore spaces and destroy that ability of the water to infiltrate. So we educate farmers that those aggregates then only last approximately 4 weeks, and then biology consumes the glues. You got to build new ones. That's why I talked about on our farm how we have to plant cover crops on the cropland if we don't have a cash crop growing, because we want to build these aggregates, feed biology, cycle nutrients, all those good things. So we instruct and inform and educate the farmer on how aggregates are built. Now, how does that benefit those who are irrigating or those who are in brittle environments? The more you can build aggregates, the more water you're going to infiltrate. Also, the more carbon you're going to have in your soil if you don't disturb it. I mentioned organic matter on our farm from 1.7 to now over 8%. For every 1% organic matter in the soil, you can hold approximately 20,000 more gallons of water per acre, okay, per foot of the soil profile. So you're going to be able to hold much more water. In my case, where I once could only hold about 35,000 gallons of water per acre, well, now I'm up over 160,000 gallons of water per acre. That makes me very resilient to drought. So I mentioned the client with 100,000 irrigated acres. Every one turn of those pivots, we were saving them about $25,000 just in energy costs alone. Okay.
Wow.
And to be able to do that. So people think, oh, I'm in a brittle environment. I can't grow a cover crop on my cropland because it's going to use water. No, in the long run, it'll save you water because you're building organic matter, you're building aggregates, you're going to infiltrate more. And then in brittle environments where solar energy, like you have there in West Texas, will evaporate out moisture, keeping armor on the soil surface, keeping that covered, that's going to make you much more resilient to drought. So you got to grow biomass in order to become more resilient. So it's an education process.
Do you think so on that massive farm? Because we haven't seen the Ogallala replenish any in decades, I think, because of our insane use of pumping water out of it. Do you think that in time, the way that farm is operating, they will see some of their irrigated water able to trickle back down and replenish the aquifer? Where we can use the water for farming, which I think it was created for us to use the water for farming. But do you think that our more responsible use of land management will help our irrigated land not only create drought resilience and energy efficiency and stuff like that, but in your mind, do you see that also being able to make its way back into the aquifer?
And in most cases, yes, it'll definitely have a positive impact. There are aquifers that are embedded in rock formations, etc. Those will not be able to. But I ask people this, okay, how deep do you have to go in your soils before you hit bedrock? That's how deep your aggregation should be. Because there's nothing, if you build aggregation, those roots will just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And we've all seen the photos there at the Land Institute of the intermediate wheatgrass, with rooting depths 15 plus feet. You
Mm.
know, on our farm, I mentioned we had the scientists come out. They were taking core samples 4 feet deep, and they were finding well aggregated soils 4 feet down. And we know it goes deeper than that. So
Mm.
think of that, how much rainfall infiltrates. If it's well aggregated, it's just going to keep going down, down. Then you think of all the nutrients
Mm.
that plant will have access to the deeper you build aggregation. We do another test with farmers on cropland where it's called a TND, total nutrient digestion test, to show them. We've now tested, we're on almost 37 million acres. We've done soil tests on most of those acres. We've never found a farm anywhere in the world that's deficient in nutrients. There's
Mm.
plenty of nutrients. The problem is the biology, the aggregation, the healthy nutrient cycle. That's
Mm.
the issue. You look at our perennial grasslands and you see these photos back when pictures were first being able to be taken of lush, deep grasslands. Nobody was fertilizing that, right? Except the animals moving across, the natural nutrient cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The biomass was getting trampled down. It was being cycled via biology. It's a self-sustaining system. We
Hmm.
can have that in agriculture today, right?
Yeah.
There's no reason why we can't, but our mindset needs to shift.
Mm. Yeah. Hmm. I'd like to talk a little bit about Regenified as well
Mhm.
while I have you.
Sure.
Another really cool, another very cool thing that you are a part of and I think founded. Um, it's basically like a way for a farmer like me who's truly pursuing regenerative practices
Yeah.
to it's like a verification
Yep.
setup, right?
Yep. So understand that on our ranch, all of our products, we could easily be certified organic if we wanted to. Okay. However, there's really not a reason for us to do so. We're getting higher than organic prices for our products anyway. Why would I just be certified organic? And I'm in no way bashing organic. I believe we should all use less chemicals and synthetic fertilizers, etc. But what I'm saying is it's about value.
Mm.
Well, when this regenerative movement, and I'll call it a movement, really started taking off, we saw a lot of greenwashing going on,
Mhm.
where there's those individuals, brands, companies, etc., out there saying, "Oh, we're sourcing regenerative products," and we're going, "That's not regenerative. That's really not improving the 4 ecosystem processes."
Mm.
So 5 of us pooled some money together and we started Regenified. And yes, it's a made up word. It's just simpler to get trademarks that way. And Regenified is first and foremost a verification company. We verify the good work farmers, ranchers are doing, land managers on their land. It now consists of over 90 different tests and observations, everything from soil to water to plant biodiversity, animal biodiversity. Uh, we're verifying how well are the ecosystem functions working on that piece of land.
Hmm.
Okay. What that does, that empowers the farmers. It gives them all this information. Okay, I have X amount of bare soil. Say I have 30% bare soil. Man, that's 30% wasted opportunity. I need to work on that. Okay. It shows, boy, I'm able to infiltrate an inch of water in 30 seconds. That's a selling point. We did a verification for a bread company in the UK. What they were most interested is how many more bees are on our regeneratively farmed land versus others, because the sight of a bee on the package of bread, that means good, healthy, and they were able to sell more bread because of it. But it empowers the farmer, and it's a tool that land manager, farmer can use then to make better decisions.
Mm.
Now, if you're selling your product, you use that information to help sell your product, no matter what you're producing, whether it's beef, lamb, pork, wheat, cotton, I don't care. You can take that information and use it to sell. Say, for instance, and we've had this happen, we had clothing companies sourcing cotton, and they wanted to know about the regenerative practices farmers were using. Well, if they're verified through Regenified, the farmer says, hey, I'm verified through Regenified. Whole Foods was one of the first large supermarket chains that looked at Regenified's protocols and standards because they're by far the most complete in the industry, and said, we want to sell those type of products that are verified Regenified. And so then we'll certify, say you're producing cotton, I use that in an example, we'll come out during the growing season and certify that. So then the brand then can put that certification on their products. Now, at this point in time, I want to make this clear. Regenified is not selling products for farmers or ranchers. It's up for the farmer or rancher to use this information to help them garner money. But it does get you that information that you need to be a better marketer and land manager. Yeah. And we're seeing tremendous interest from major brands that, again, I won't mention names here, but if you name, there's a lot of the major brands that are coming to us saying, this is great. We want to market our products, because those brands, what do they need more than anything else? They need to source a consistent supply of high quality product. And they also need the stories of the farmers to put on their packages, etc.
Yeah.
So we have farmers who have gone down this regenerative, Regenified, gotten the verification, become certified, that are garnering a substantial premium for it because of that.
And if someone is verified, is it shown on their labeling that they're Regenified?
That's up to them. Up to them. They're verified. Then it's up to them if they want to certify their products that they grew during the year, and realize the verifiers from Regenified need to come out and look at that crop as it's growing, or that animal as it's being raised, in order to certify it. And then they have the ability, yes, to put it on their packages if they so choose.
That's great. It's such a greenwashing is such a problem for consumers. It's aggravating for food producers, but I think it's an actual problem for consumers because it's so easy to have the wool pulled over and think that you're buying something healthy when you're just buying the exact same thing you'd get anywhere else. And I appreciate Regenified because it's a way to protect consumers.
You're absolutely right, Josh. It allows the ability of consumers to be informed, and they know if that product is certified Regenified, that it has been tested for all these different protocols, and it meets the standards of Regenified.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, who better to do it than someone who's probably the most picky about what regenerative actually means. That's great. Well, I think we're out of time here. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I appreciate you being on here so much, Gabe. Such an informative interview for me and hopefully for our listeners.
Well, thank you, Josh. It was a real pleasure. And I encourage everyone out there, just educate, become a lifelong learner. And I look at regenerative agriculture as truly common ground for common good. I get very frustrated in society today. We tend to to argue about a small percentage of things, but I really honestly believe that as a society, all of us want nutrient-dense food and clean air and clean water, and we want to be able to leave land better for our children. Why don't we come together, find common ground for common good, and move together for the betterment of all?
Absolutely. And I'll plug a couple of those documentaries that are excellent at helping people understand that at the end of this. But I have one final question for you, and this is usually a surprise question for everybody. But who are some farmers that Gabe Brown finds inspirational or even influential?
That is a great question. And I find those who have an open mind and a willingness to change. I look at people, Brandon Bach here in North Dakota took a 4,500 acre conventional farm, changed it to regenerative, is just really touting it. I look at Roy Thompson in South Dakota, farmer, personal health issues, and turned to nutrient-dense food to heal his health and really realized that it all begins on his farm. I look at Tim and Robin Ralston, rice farmers in Arkansas, who are just doing a fantastic job. Everybody says rice needs to be flooded. You can't grow it no-till regeneratively. They're doing it. I look at there's so many. I look at Macaulay Kincaid in Missouri who listened to a podcast about becoming a better marketer and realized it started with him, and he had to market his products and got on the phone and really started becoming a better marketer and then educating people on soil health. There's thousands of them out there, Josh. I just named a few of them, but it really, warms my heart. I look at the Burroughs family farm with orchards in California. Everybody out there, you can't have anything growing between these orchard rows. They're growing cover crops, grazing sheep between the orchards, producing honey, along with all of their nut crops. And there's so many. It's just fantastic to see.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I haven't had anybody able to just ramble names off like that. I love it.
I could give you hundreds.
Really great. That's awesome.
I admire all of them because in their context, I look at Fernando Falamer in the Chihuahua Desert, less than 6 inches of rain a year that he'll show you photos with grass over his waist, sometimes over his head, growing it on. He went 2 years on 3/4 of an inch of moisture, didn't have to liquidate his cow herd, had enough forage because his soils are so healthy.
I think I've heard a podcast with him on it, and it was insane to hear his story. Maybe we'll invite him on soon. Okay. Well, excellent answer to the final question. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. Hope you have a Merry Christmas, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, Josh. Merry Christmas,
Yes, sir.
everyone.
Have a good one. Bye.
Take me back where I can see miles of dirt in front of me. Summer's hot and winter's mean. There ain't nothing in between.
Hey, thanks for listening today. If you liked it, or if you think you might like it in the future, please click the subscribe button, click the like button, share it with your friends, share it with your mom. We'd love to have you along for the journey. We'll have a lot of guests in the future. We'll have a lot of fun stories to tell, and we look forward to you being along for the ride. Our intro and outro music is Flatlands by Ryan Colwell. If you haven't heard of him, now you have. Go check him out. We'll see you next time.
It's a great big sky.